Hello, everybody. It's April the 25th, 2025. I'm Jason White. This is Into the Fire, coming to you live from Tulsa, Oklahoma, episode number 47. Dominic is probably backstage going, what in the heck did I get into with that headbanging music? But listen, we got an all-star on tonight, an all-star. I'll just tell you this much, that one of the other ATF undercovers, Jay Dobbins, who's pretty well known in the industry of undercover work, he has said that Dominic, if there was a Mount Rushmore of undercovers, Dominic is definitely going to be front and center on that, along with Billy Queen, by the way, because Billy Queen, we had him on a few weeks ago. So welcome, everybody. I see that there's a lot of regulars in the house. I love it. Welcome. I'm glad you guys are spending your Friday evening with us. And I have no doubt that tonight is going to be just an awesome, entertaining episode where we're going to talk a little bit about the Mafia and Richard Kuklinski, also known as the Iceman. I think it was last week. Maybe it was, I can't remember. My dates kind of run together. But April 16th, I was lucky enough to speak at the Nebraska Heart Institute in Lincoln, Nebraska. I know I get kind of questions a lot from a lot of people. They're like, when can we see you, and where can we, is there anything for the public? And some things are, and some things aren't. I'll be in Palm Springs in October. That's going to be more of a law enforcement kind of deal. But if you're law enforcement, there's a lot of different places that you can catch me. However, I do want to mention this again. I'm going to be back in Fort Smith, Arkansas at the U.S. Marshal Museum, and that place is really nice. But I will be back there November the 21st. You've got plenty of time if you're in the area, or if it's, you've wanted to go to Fort Smith, Arkansas, because, that's just a place where people, that's on their bucket list to go. But they do have a lot of really neat museums there that involve the U.S. Marshals. And that museum that they've got there is pretty epic. If you decide to go to that, it's 2 hours of just nonstop me. You will see some real life homicide stuff, and you'll be able to interact with me, of course, before and after the program, and it's great. So I wouldn't steer you wrong. Trust me, we sold out at 300 seats the last time, and I have no doubt that this time around we'll probably sell out again. So there's a small charge, but it's all going to the museum. It's a great cause, and when you see the museum, you'll see how good it is. This week, Dominick Polifrone, I got to thank Paul Keith. Paul Keith is my committee member on the Homicide Investigators of Texas Association, and I've known Paul for a long time. And Paul had said, hey, you need to have Dominic on your show. And I keep trying to convince Dominic, as has Paul Keith. We're trying to get him to we're twisting his arm a little bit to see if he'll join us in San Antonio next March. And that's another thing. If you're law enforcement, I want to mention this. If you're law enforcement next March, give us a look at the Homicide Investigators of Texas Association. If you are a presenter and you've got something that's really fascinating and you think that it's something that we need to know about, then by all means, reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram. You can find me on my YouTube page. My YouTube page has got most of these episodes on there. And that's one last thing I want to mention real quick. KGRA, for those of you that had subscribed to the KGRA digital broadcasting group to get that exclusive content and stuff behind the wall where you could see these videos indefinitely, really, they've stopped that. So what I mean by stopping it is it's free. So you can literally go over to the KGRA digital broadcasting site and check out these episodes, or you can go to my YouTube page. I'd like for you to go to my YouTube page, because then you can send me messages and hit like and all this, that, and the other. And but that's good. That's a good thing. So it's going to be free for you. And so let them know what you think about that. That's great. That's a good move. So if you were getting charged, you're not getting charged anymore. They put a stop to that. So anyway, let's get after this. I don't want to waste any of Dominic's time. This guy is something else, man. I've talked to him a number of times on the phone, and it's like I've known him for years. Dominick Polifrone is a law enforcement professional with nearly 30 decades of nationally recognized service. A lifelong resident of Bergen County, New Jersey, Born and raised in Hackensack, Dominic received his education at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, where he earned a Bachelor of Science degree in law enforcement and corrections. At the University of Nebraska in Omaha, Dominic exhibited his athletic prowess by earning first-team All-American linebacker and Southeast Golden Gloves heavyweight champion. Man, I didn't know that. He's not somebody you'd really want to get mixed up with, I guess. His career commenced in 1971 with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office as a criminal investigator. And in January of 1976, he was sworn in as a special agent in the New York field office of the United States Department of the Treasury's Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Division. Several high points in his career with the ATF were his lead role in the capture of a serial murderer known as the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski, one of the most featured hitmen in the state of New Jersey, as well as playing an integral part of the Armed Criminal Enforcement Project of the streets of Washington, D.C. In response to his managerial and administrative skills, Dominic was promoted to resident agent in charge of the New Jersey field office, and in this capacity, he oversaw the execution of national policies in New Jersey on far-ranging issues from illegal weapons and explosive smuggling, gang activities, and sensitive security issues to the highly regarded Project Lisa, all in the most diverse and densely populated state of the Union. Recognized as one of the top 10 police officers of the year in Parade magazine by the Association of International Chiefs of Police. That's right there in and of itself. We could have just said that, and that says it all. But his achievements and contributions to the law enforcement society have been acknowledged by entities such as the United States Attorney's Office, FBI, United States Marshal Service, Secret Service, New Jersey State Police, and the New York Police Department. Honors bestowed upon him reflect his standing in the law enforcement community. Most notably are the United States Exceptional Service Award from the Department of Treasury and the New Jersey Valor Award. Furthermore, Dominic was recognized in the United States of America House of Representatives for his leadership, which has been recognized by both members of the law enforcement community and by the private sector. My gosh. You know, I've been lucky enough to get a couple of letters of recognition that are suitable for framing. And I think I'm something. But Dominic, my gosh, superstar. I'm telling you, superstar. And so, Amanda, go ahead and throw that video up real quick.
I was born in a neighborhood, an Italian neighborhood in Hackensack. And all the people that I've dealt with, the older guys, a lot have done some time, from robbing banks to hijacking loads. I was 13, and I started driving the milk truck before the driver came. And what happened was I was delivering the milk, and inside the bottles I'm finding monies. And I said, what's this monies here? And they said, those are numbers. You see the slip? And on the slip would be a box number like 2020. You can box it, you can play it straight, and they'll tell you on the slip of paper that was in the milk bottle what they wanted and what they played. I said, you're kidding. He said, you want to make some extra money? You're earning $7 a week delivering milk. In addition, they gave me another $7 because I was collecting the numbers from the milk bottles from other people. And I was making an extra $7, so I was making $14 a week. That was a lot of money back then. You know, I'd take all my friends out, you know. I mean, it was nice having that type of money as a young kid. Eventually, I went to college. I graduated with a Bachelor of Science in criminology, and there I got into law enforcement, and my career began. I didn't really understand that much about undercover work, but I wanted to give it a shot, and I started my career with the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, and then I went to a higher level with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms federally. And I worked 15 years in the streets. The undercover work that I was involved with, involving vice, narcotics, illegal firearms, explosives, pipe bombs, you name it, I did it. I was traveling all over the country, playing a bad guy, and from here to Miami, and it came really easy to me. Undercover's not made for everybody. It's only made for certain people. When you make your mistakes, make them at the academy. In the streets, you can't afford to make a mistake, because when you do, you die.
I'd like to welcome Dominick Polifrone. How you doing, buddy? I love the man.
I was looking at that video, and very interesting. And by the way, I really enjoyed that music in the beginning.
Good. You know what? I enjoy your little man cave behind you. That looks like a great place to be.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Listen, I'll tell you what. I've talked to him a few times on the phone before we got on here, and I've already figured out how you were so successful, because literally it's like as if I've known you for years. Whenever you call, it's no doubt. I did undercover for a couple of years, man, but I'll tell you. And I considered myself successful, and I'd heard other people say that I was good at it, but the level of undercover that you were doing is on a whole nother planet. I mean, it really is. And you're right. It is not for everybody, and especially the work that you were doing. So you were living the life, and that's the difference from just going out and doing a buy and stuff.
Well, from the Italian neighborhood that I grew up in, I mean, it came easy. I mean, that was a way of life. And it just was an everyday situation for me. I mean, listen, I mean, you can pick the avenue which way you want to go. There's that fork in the road. You want to go to the left or you want to go to the right. Make the decision, okay? Because once you make the decision, you're bound. So I took the good guys instead. And I was respected by those bad guys, believe it or not, in my neighborhood. One hand washes the other. So it worked out for me.
And I think that probably was not necessarily really easy for you to make that transition and do the undercover world, because I mean, the 6 degrees of separation, but really in those communities, they're pretty tight knit, I'm thinking. And just because you're over in New York doesn't mean you're not going to cross paths with people that are related or people that you may know and stuff. I think that would be really scary.
Oh, hell, you never know who you're going to run into. And on the other case that you want to talk about later on, Kuklinski, he was only 10 miles from where I lived in Bergen County. So that was another tight situation. So there was a lot involved, working the streets and worried about running into bad guys. Listen, when I pulled into the neighborhood back home, one day I had a Lincoln, I had the Mark IV, I had the Vet, I had a jitney cab. I mean, my neighbors, didn't know who I was, what I was, and till down the road. But it was what meant to be with me. And
Yeah.
I wouldn't change a thing. That was the way my destiny was.
Yeah, and a great personal sacrifice. And Billy says the same thing. Jay Dobbins, I don't know him. I don't know Jay yet. One day I'll probably meet him. But with there's a common theme. You guys really poured your heart into this and put your life into this. And
these guys
great sacrifice,
worked their butts off.
Yeah.
And wonderful agents. And, thank God they're alive today.
Yeah, agreed. What was it about now I heard that you started out with the prosecutor's office and so forth, but what was it about the ATF that really kind of lured you to them? What was it that attracted you?
I went for interviews, with various agencies. And when I went with ATF, I met some of the agents and I just felt comfortable. And I liked regarding the undercover. Look, DEA is just a great agency, phenomenal agents. buying drugs. I mean, and it's not easy. And I like the idea. Listen, you're buying illegal guns, trafficking in explosives, um, and the guys were telling me stories and everything else, and it felt comfortable. The only thing, the drawback was when I was at the prosecutor's office, I think I was making about $10,000, okay, a year, okay. When I was going to go with ATF, they were going to start me off at 8,000, and I turned them down. And then the special agent in charge, Michael LaPerch, called me several times. He goes, "Listen, the reason why you're starting off as a GS7, which is $8,000, he says, eventually there's a pay scale here. In 3 years, are you going to make this amount at the prosecutor's office?" And I said, "No." He says, "Well, think about it." Then I went back and we talked again. And I said, I'll take the position. And then I felt comfortable. I went down to the academy. I had a lot of experience with the prosecutor's office when I was working there. And I became outstanding special agent with my class down at the academy down in Federal Law Enforcement Training Center down in Glencoe, Georgia. I think it was 10 weeks there, and you're working with other different agents from different agencies. Then once you finish up there, as long as you pass everything, then you go back to your office. Mine was New York. Then you go back for another 10 weeks, I think it was, and you're only going to do what ATF does, and only ATF agents. You're going to do undercover. You're going to learn what to testify. You're going to write search warrants. And it came easy to me because that's what I did at the prosecutor's office. And everything just was falling into place, was comfortable. And then eventually when I graduated the academy down there and went back to New York, I started working undercover, and they put me in with my partner, Alex Diatri, who to this day, okay, is retired, and we're very close. I was godfather for his son. And what happened with him when he was working in Miami, he was shot 5 times with a .357, 4 times in the chest, and 1 grazed his head and survived.
Jeez.
So, like I said, it's not made for everybody because you don't know what these individuals are. One day they're your best friend, the next day, they'll cut your throat. And you got to understand that. It's nothing personal. It's just business. If you can understand you're only going to deal these people with business, that's what it is. It's business. You're not going to get personal. We're not going there to break bread. I'm not going to sit down with your family, and I'm not going to tell you to come by me to sit down. We're here to earn money, period. Yeah. So get it through your head.
Now, New York NYPD, well, they or whoever, who were the powers to be that had to be trusted people at the time, they actually put together a jacket for you, which basically had a mugshot or mugshots and a record, a rap sheet in the event. Because I'm sure, as with any department, there's probably there's people that squeak through that may do some investigating, and I'm sure that they do that on people, don't they?
Well, on this particular case, when I was working with OCCB, the Organized Crime Unit was a specialized unit there who they wanted this individual to be on the witness protection program, which he was going. I had to get a different undercover license. I used the name Dominic Michael Provenzano. I met Mr. Provenzano when I was in my younger days. And he was a character, himself. I mean, if you look him up, ran the unions in New Jersey, and very powerful individual. And they gave me the undercover license. Then they gave me I had a rap sheet. And that was in case any bad guy or any wise guy or organized crime guy had a connection and they wanted to check the records on me. They went and that was flagged. So if you went in there to check on Dominic Provenzano, it's going to be monitored. Why is this fucking guy coming to check on this kid? What's going on there?
Yeah.
So we had all base covers. And then I had I used an apartment, I think it was the Horizon House in Fort Lee. There must have been like 10,000 units. Because when you meet bad guys, hey, what about coming here, going here, we got these gomadas, if their stories, man, I'll tell you, like some of these guys from in Astoria, Queens, the diner owners from Jersey and New York would go and play this game Babook in Queens. A lot of money on that table, and it would be the most beautiful women that you can imagine that were in these places, and money just flying everywhere. And they felt comfortable with me and offered me different positions to do different jobs. So you had to be careful which way you're gonna go or get caught in the bind here, and it's difficult, but you got to make it work. And I was working so many damn hours. It's one of them things where you don't have a family life.
Yeah. So you start out there. Were you actually living in New York City, or were you actually living in New Jersey and kind of commuting?
I was living in Jersey.
Okay. So, and what were you, how were you even were you driving over there?
I had my car was with New York plates, was registered to the high right. There's 10,000 units.
Yeah.
Okay. Department number wasn't listed on the tag. I had a brand new Lincoln Continental Mark IV. Okay. And I would drive that around and, play the game, and meet these guys and do business.
Yeah. So put up that map real quick, Amanda. You guys meet, and then they wanted you originally. There was an informant that basically was going into witness protection, and he started talking to you. And this is the 5 families in New York City, and I was kind of doing just a little bit of research before I came on here, just out of curiosity, because I was like, what families were kind of I know that you did a deal with John Gotti's kid, didn't you, at some point in time? Yeah.
Yeah. I met him it's funny how you still recall those things. I met him at the Bedrock Bar. I think it was on Bath Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. And we negotiated for heroin. And he sold me the heroin later at the Bedrock. I don't know if it's still there, but it was on Bath Avenue and in
Brooklyn, isn't it? Yeah, Brooklyn.
And also, don't forget, if you look at it, you got the Banana family, the Colombo, the Gambinos, the Genovese. But if you look at when it originally started, okay, Maranzano, okay, that became the Banana family, the Bafacci, the Colombo family. It all derived, really from Lucky Luciano starting the 5 families and the commission where they ran everything. And everybody does their own thing. They have their own little cells, but there's nothing wrong with other people dealing. If I dealt with the Colombo and I'm Genovese, we're earning on the side, okay? We're not going to tell everybody that what we're earning, okay? Oh, you can't fucking work with them. That you got to be careful. That crew, you want to go with the DeMeos, man, that guy's crazy. You got to be careful. He wants a piece of the action. So you got to understand how it works and how to communicate. And you work by the seat of your ass, because their decisions, I don't give a damn what you say, okay? Everything is not written in that book. So you got to make the decisions on the seat of your butt right there and then. And that's the way it is. There was an incident that happened. I was doing bearer bonds in New York City. And I walk in, I was wired, and I sat at the table. And then he was going to give me samples of, I think it was 5,000 denomination of bearer bonds that they had a connection in the bank that they stole. And he see if I wanted to buy them. He says, take the samples, bring them to your people, take a look at. And when I went there, and this is God's honest truth, and I think it was on 2nd Avenue. I think it was a place that used to be called September's. And it was on a corner. And I went in and I sat down, and there were 3 guys and a couple of lady friends, okay, that I didn't know. I'm meeting these people for the first time. And as I walk in, I sit down, and the guy's just looking at me. And then he says, how do I know you're not a cop? I said, look, I came here to do business. I said, you don't want to do business? We don't do business. I said, I'm not a cop. He says, I don't know. I'm just not sure. And I'm wired. And I said, look, I came here to do business. If we don't want to do it, you don't want to do it, no problem. So he goes, I don't know. I said, you're breaking my balls. I said, how do I know you're not a cop?
Yeah.
That's
what I was thinking in my mind.
Now he's looking at me. This is true. The girls get up and they, hey, how you doing? Don't worry. Like rubbing me to see if I had a wire. I said, don't touch me. Don't put your hands on me. Okay. And they're looking at me. And finally I said to him, I get up and I tell him, now get up. He says, I said, get up. And I start taking my pants off. And I unbuckle my pants and I started, and people look at me and I'm being belligerent, like loud, and they look, and finally he goes, whoa, slow down. Sit down a minute. Sit down. I buckle up. I sit down, and I get the bearer bonds on consignment. And was I wired? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically that's how now when you started out, and just to kind of let people know some of these families and so forth that you would be able to associate them with is, for instance, the Bonanno family. That's the family that Donnie Brasco, Joe Pistone had kind of infiltrated, and
Yes.
and the Gambino family. That's going to be like Paul Castellano that was murdered out in front of the Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan. And also John Gotti. John Gotti's actually suspected to be behind that, or at least involved in that. I think that hit. But then the other one is the Lucchese family, and that's right. Goodfellas. That's the Goodfellas.
Yeah,
group. That's the Lucchese. So, when did you get into that mafia, the 5 family kind of deal? Where are some of these?
I got into that. I left the prosecutor's office in 76. I think I started 1970, and I left in 76 to start with ATF. Went to the academy. Then I came back, and I believe it was around 1978. I think it was that when they came to me and to the ATF, I remember them like it was yesterday. They came in around 5:00 that evening. And came in with their brass and my bosses, and I was in my squad room, and they called me in, and we sat down close to 2 hours where they were throwing things out to me, and then the informant said, no, I can work with him. I feel comfortable. And we went out that night, and I rented the Humbles, and it started from there. And we were rocking and rolling. I'm telling you, I couldn't keep up with it. I'd meet Harry the Pick. They'd call me up and says, hey, you got to come. You got to get, I would just get home. I would just get back to Jersey. Okay. The phone would ring and says, Dom, you got to meet at the Meadowlands. I want you to meet Harry the Pick. I said, oh God. I said, I just got in. I said, I'm exhausted. Dom, you got to meet us there. I meet them at the location. I go in and I meet Harry the Pick. Harry the Pick was an individual that worked for the mobs, and he was a safe cracker and went around the country and opened up safes. He would get 10% of the booty in the safe. It was amazing. They had a network there. We wouldn't have a deficit in the United States if they ran the country. You know.
Yeah. Hey, you could say hi to Paul Keith. He actually made it here now. He just messaged me and said, "All right, I'm on finally." So thanks to you, Paul, that we're here, or maybe we should call you Paulie. So anyway,
yeah.
Hey, so you get involved in this, and you're starting to rock and roll, and you separate yourself from the informant, and you're off doing different things. And
I couldn't keep up after a while. I mean, it was so much. The undercover phone was ringing like I was buying machine guns with silencers. I'd meet a guy. He just got out of prison in Queens. I think it was like a guy by the name of Caprino, and he just got out. And I meet him, and wants to sell me a machine gun. And when I go upstairs, it's an Italian family. She's cooking me sausage and peppers. I'm telling you, I'm going, oh my God. I said, this guy, they're going to pump him daylight because he's never going to see the light again, you know? And he says, after a while, I'm negotiating with him. I buy the machine gun, and he says, Dom, I'm going to teach you like you're my own son. Here's what we're going to do with the kilo. He says, I'm going to teach you this here. He says, we get a kilo. It's 2.2 pounds. I said, okay. He says, now we get the kilo and we get the 0.2 pounds and we put it on the side. And we make our money on this until we develop and we get more kilos of cocaine, and we take our 0.3 and develop ourselves. We get it. We get a kilo. That's all profit. He says, now we're going to cut it. He says, we're going to make lots and lots of money. I mean, these guys were so equipped with things and how to run this, enterprise. It was amazing, just amazing. And they took me in like I was part of their family, like they knew me for years. I get along with people. I know when to come on strong and I know when to back off. And
yeah. And this is a time too, Dom, that this is before Henry Hill and all that jazz, man. Isn't that correct? This is the kind.
I think Henry Hill in that time, because if you look at Goodfellas, okay, the movie Goodfellas, I don't know if you ever saw that.
Oh, more times than my wife would like me to watch it.
Okay, but when you look at Goodfellas, okay, that typical location of people was exactly where I was hanging out, called the store with the Kuklinski case.
Okay.
Right to the T. And I remember when we were doing the 5 families and we were going to put on the witness protection program. And he goes, Dom, he says, I'm going to tell you something. And we're at a location on Bath Avenue in Brooklyn. And he goes, everybody thinks they're called wise guys. He says, that's not true. He's coining me this information in the 70s. He goes, they're really called a good fella. He says, that's what they're really called. He's a good fella. He says, but people use wise guy. He says, but it's a good fella. And what comes out later on?
Yeah.
Goodfellas. And he was so ahead of his time. I learned so much from him. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. I was meeting people then with these organized crime individuals that you don't meet them and sit down with them. And I met, and we did. We're doing hand to hand, and sometime I'm getting it on consignment from these guys. That's how much they trusted me and the informant. And then I get the informant, like I told you, I get him out of the picture, which I've done constantly. And it was something else. There was a guy, I don't know if it's still there. There was a place called the Villa Aegea in Brooklyn. Mickey Boy Paradiso. That's it. Mickey Boy Paradiso at the Villa Aegea. Made guy. I go in and I'm going to buy a hijack load of untaxed cigarettes that they just hijacked this trailer. I walk in with 10 grand, and it's a little joint with a little cappuccino program right there. So what happened was I'm sitting and I said, I'm here to see Mickey Boy. And the old man comes up, not Mickey Boy, this other guy comes up to me, and he's this close to me. And he's looking, he goes, I don't know. I say, listen, tell Mickey Boy. If he wants me to leave, I'll leave. No problem. He's looking, he goes, yeah, let me make you some espresso. We have some espresso. And he's still breaking my stones, this old man. He's this close to me. I said, hey, listen, I'm here to do business with Mickey Boy. He goes, he says, you never know. I said, that's right. I said, if you don't want to do the deal, that's okay with me too. Then Mickey Boy comes out, says to the old man, go behind the counter. Mickey Boy, I go in this little back room. I give him 10,000. He counts it. We walk outside, and he makes a motion, and here comes this tractor trailer, huge tractor trailer with untaxed cigarettes. Comes in. The driver gets out. I have another undercover agent come that can drive the huge trailer, take it, and go. And wow. Mickey Boy was something else. There was rumor that sometimes when he would lend money and you didn't pay the VIG, there was an elderly man, apparently, I don't know if he was in the 70s or 80s, and to make a statement in the neighborhood, they were saying that, with the old-fashioned acetylene torch that they'd have to light up? Well, the old man couldn't make the payment, and he burned them right there in front of the Villa Aegea and said, this is a lesson I want everybody to understand. When that due date comes, you pay. Like I said, it's strictly business.
Did anybody try to sponsor you to bring you into their family and have them, like a captain having you work for them?
No, they thought, for whatever reason, to this day, I still don't know, all the people that I've dealt with, okay, I used the name Provenzano. I had the rap sheet, okay, and all that. For whatever reason, people would go, he's okay, he's a good fella. His brother's a good fella. Now, now, all the people that I dealt with, okay, I think the arrests were about 68. I still got the plaque. It was about 68 Maid and associates that we took down, from machine guns to explosives to dynamite, pipe bombs, to you name it. We took these people down, and one of them was she was a great assistant U.S. attorney. Her name was Laura Bravetti. Used to work out of the Southern District of New York, and it was amazing. Just going with these people, and they thinking that I had carte blanche because who I'm hooked up with, whoever they thought it was. And out of all these people that I've dealt with, that I moved up the ladder with, no arrests went down. And what happened one day, even the cops, there was a gambling violation. It wasn't the criteria federally. So they had to go to Gold's office in Brooklyn. And they didn't want to do that. They said, drop the case, do whatever you got to do, the cops. They didn't want to go. but the superior said, you got to go grand jury. Well, when the cops went in, okay, to testify, I'd say within an hour, all the bad guys knew that there was either a rat among us. Didn't know who, but they had an individual already on the grand jury, the bad guys. It's amazing. It's just amazing how they had their hands tied into everything from concrete to the unions. They were running the show.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, let me ask you, are you Sicilian? Could you have went that route?
No, I'm Calabrese. I got a hard head. I'm from Calabria. Who's ever out there, if they know that. Yeah, I went back. Matter of fact, I was just in Italy a couple of months ago. So, yeah, my father's from Calabria.
Okay.
Yeah, I came over on the boat.
So theoretically, that would have prohibited you from actually becoming a made.
No, guy. I was a pure Italian. I'm Italian.
Okay. So you could have.
The ironic part about it is, you say, hey, you got to be completely, all Italian, to become a made guy. Did you see some of these people taking the DNA test? And I see that, they have so much, whether they're part Irish, half Asian, half this. It's amazing. Yeah. Laugh.
All right. So this is interesting stuff. So, and you said something else. I want to make sure you said something about Santoro. Is it Santoro, Santeri? What's the name over there? And how did that name come up in another deal? I saw you talking about him.
Johnny Santora, I believe it was.
Yeah.
Was the one who rented me Humbles in the beginning in Queens. That was our first individual when they decided to go with me as the undercover and start the ball rolling.
Okay. The reason why I asked is because I was wondering if it was related to Nicky, the one from Casino, the short guy that Joe, you never know. I mean, maybe he could have been, who knows? Who knows? All right. So that's interesting stuff. And so I want to kind of transition here real quick, because this whole next section is really what you're known for, honestly. That other stuff is epic. And I asked you a really stupid question.
The ironic part, though, if we went in chronological order, there is so much that I've done that after a while, sometimes I don't even remember unless somebody enlightens and says, Dom, do you remember when you did this? And Jesus, I said, yeah, I do. I mean, times flying to Miami, I'm dealing with a whole thing load of kilos of cocaine. I'm dealing with the Colombians and, give me a sample. I'd pull up and they'd have this big Lincoln, canary yellow, white interior for me. And I would be doing all kinds of stuff. I did it was a dry conspiracy, but we convicted the individual also. I met him in Puerto Rico, and we were doing 10,000 deal for machine guns to be delivered to Puerto Rico, but you need an end user certificate. At that time, it was about 250,000 to move those guns, and you got to have that certificate. And there's a lot involved to understand about moving certain things.
Yeah. Did you ever work anything with the Tropicana associates family?
No.
Down in Florida? No. So and the Mafia back then, was it pretty? Did you ever go to Vegas on any?
No, I was just strictly in New York.
Okay. All right. So
I did from Staten Island, Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, all the way to Yonkers. I mean, I met a guy by the name of Joey Sick. This guy was huge. Now we're standing outside on one of the avenues, and this is the first time I meet him, and he's heard about me, and they wanted me to set up something where they wanted to do a jewelry heist. And Joey Ash was his real name, and he went by the name of Joey Sick. and he was a sick son of a bitch. He says, Dom, he says, listen, take a ride with me up to Yonkers. He says, I want you to meet my girlfriend. I go up. We go to this diner, and we go into the diner in Yonkers, and there's this pretty waitress, and he goes, that's my girlfriend. And he goes, look, hon, look what, and he takes out these women's underwear, and he says, this is for you. Now, she's sort of getting embarrassed. The owner of the diner is her husband. And he says tells that guy, listen, sit the fuck down. You don't interfere with me. That's my girlfriend. Do I make myself clear? Now, this is Joey's sick. I said, Joe, man, what are you starting something like that for? No. Just, it's okay. It's okay. He says, I come here a lot. I said, okay. He says, by the way, he says, I want you to meet a couple of guys. And I meet them. And on consignment that day, they also give me 3 high standard 22 caliber silencers on consignment then.
Like no problem. Here
Like
you
no
go.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that shows, hey, that's just a credit to your ability to be able to get along. Well, I mean, you said it earlier. I mean, you grew up in that environment already. So it wasn't like you had to learn it. It wasn't different for you. That was just the way you grew up in a sense, right?
Well, the neighborhood. I remember this guy, Frankie, I can't think of his last name. He robbed banks and all that. And I don't know if he died in a shootout. And then when the Meadowlands was being built, the stadium, them guys were hitting that place, robbing copper and everything else, man, with the trucks, and all kinds of stuff was going on. Hanging out at this place called the Melody Bar on Hudson Street in Hackensack, just the way it is.
Yeah. Well, I want to get into a little bit about, I definitely want to, and by the way, anytime you want to segue in another direction, by all means, this is about you. So you have the floor, but we're going to jump into the Iceman a little bit, because that is a huge part of this entire story and so forth. And I didn't miss anything really epic in there, right? So, Dom, there's nothing epic that we've missed, right?
No. Because Jason, there's so much, and just so people understand. Listen, I said there's no Superman out there. I put my pants on just like everybody else. Okay, and you have to understand, it's strictly business. And you better keep that right in front of your forehead, because at any time, anything can go wrong.
Yeah. That makes me think about that question that I'd asked you. I asked you this a few days ago, and I felt stupid the moment I asked it. But I was like, well, which one of those 5 families was like the worst? And you said, they're all bad.
Yeah.
They were all just as dangerous. And you're right. Because, I mean, at any moment, any one of them from any one of those families could have came back and just killed you just for thinking, just having a thought that maybe you were a cop or dirty or something.
When I was going to Boston, there used to be a place called the War Zone. It's not like that anymore, but I met a guy by the name of Tommy Guerrero, my partner. We bought machine guns there. And he came back to New York a couple of days later with a pound of plastic explosives on the plane that time. And he flew in, took him to the bar, and we took him down then when he came with the plastic explosives. And he tells my partner, Alex Diatri, great undercover guy, and says to him, Al, I would have killed for you. So
yeah.
We were believable. We used to get stopped sometimes when we were in the car together. Just one of them things.
Hey, what would have happened if let's say, I mean, this is just my own ignorance. And I'm a cop, and I've been a cop for 27 years. But let's say you got hooked up for some. I bet you saw all kinds of stuff. I bet you saw some crazy stuff from the cops. I bet you saw some crazy stuff on the other side. I'm a little surprised you didn't see a body in a trunk a time or two. Just being at the one spot here and there, and maybe you did. I don't know, but I'm sure you saw some crazy stuff. And what if a cop just happened to arrest you on some nonsense or jam you
I
up?
think personally, from that or the Kuklinski case, that all the brass and even the attorney general and the acting governor at that time all knew what I was doing on the Kuklinski case. I mean, they wanted this guy off the street because sooner or later he was a menace. And what happened was that there was a team that was following him, but apparently he was still killing people.
All right, Amanda, start off with this. Start off with that second video real quick, and then we'll jump into Richard Kuklinski.
An evil person.
When your numbers out.
Pleasure from seeing someone terrified.
He did it because he liked it.
Staring down the barrel of a gun.
Evil to the core. He could send fear through somebody's body without saying a word.
He was very unpredictable. He was very cunning.
One of the most prolific mob killers.
The name Iceman.
The business of murdering people for profit.
He was a killing machine. He could do it on a moment's notice with no hesitation. This is the devil.
He knew how to cover his tracks. He was very careful. They needed direct evidence. They needed to hear how he murdered these individuals.
He killed with firearms, knives,
Cyanide.
He was the toughest guy on the block. He was the most dangerous animal in the jungle.
The lives of others have no meaning to this man.
He was capable of anything.
Now, you had recommended that I check out that one on HLN Headline News when they'd put that out, and I watched both parts of that, and it was actually really good. You were right. I had not seen that before. So let's talk about how it all started, where you ended up getting diverted onto the Night Stalker, onto the Iceman road.
What?
And of course, he wasn't known as the Iceman at that moment, was he?
No. What had happened was I worked for the prosecutor's office. You know that, okay? I told you that in the beginning. All the people that I worked with in the prosecutor's office then as detectives became superiors, deputy chiefs, all knew me. The prosecutors and assistant prosecutors that I worked in the state of New Jersey knew me. I worked with them when they were assistant prosecutors. Some have become prosecutors. Okay, the U.S. attorney, Faith Hochberg, she became a federal judge. Stu Rabner became the chief justice of the New Jersey State Supreme Court. These individuals and these prosecutors knew me. And Bobby Carroll, that I worked with, that went with the Attorney General's office and then became the chief attorney to handle the Kuklinski case, did a phenomenal job. And I knew him when he was an assistant prosecutor at Essex County, knew all about what I did. And they knew me. They knew what I can do. And there was never a time where they used to say, Dom, sooner or later, that damn rope has got to snap. And it just keeps going. It just keeps going. Mm-hmm. You better cover your ass. You better watch. It's true. It's true. You can really get involved in there. Sometimes you got to take a step backward and say, hey, no. I'm supposed to meet the individual at a location, and then we're not supposed to move. Okay, when I say not supposed to move, so the surveillance people have you covered in case, God forbid, something happens. However, get in the car, let's go for a ride. And it has happened, okay? Mm-hmm. You don't fucking move from the spot because once you do, you're on your own. So you really got to be careful. I'm sorry. Where were we now?
Well, no, I know what you're talking about. I know what you're saying for sure. And that's kind of the road that Billy Queen was on where,
Yeah. Yeah, Billy and Jay
Yeah.
Bergman. Them dudes
Yeah.
were something
They,
else.
they were on their own a lot,
Yeah.
and you were. There's no doubt that you were too. If you're just wearing a wire and you're off living the life, then you're kind of on your own. But because you didn't have backup most of the time with respect to the Five Family investigations and a lot of other investigations you've been involved in. But with respect to Richard Kuklinski, you had more backup with respect to that because what you already knew about this guy, right?
Yeah. On some cases, you may just have a nickname. But with the Kuklinski file, when they called me in to say, listen, we need somebody with a lot of experience to infiltrate, and this is where he hangs out at the store in Paterson, New Jersey. And he met his victims there that disappeared with money and no returns. And he uses poison. And I'm reading the thing, poison. What do you mean poison? And they're going, it's not cyanide that we're talking about, that you go to the hardware store and you're buying rat poison. We're talking about a chemist that makes this. It's pure cyanide. And when it gets into your epidermis or something, there's no antidote. You kiss your ass goodbye. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
And I said, well, they gave me the file, and I look at the file, and it's a big, thick file. And he lived in Dumont, New Jersey, had a family, but he also had a different life too. And he was coy. He was something else, man. Yeah, he wore these orange tinged glasses that it seems like he would reach into your soul and say, I own you. And I'll get into that because this guy, I called him the devil. He was the devil. Nothing bothered him. And what happened is I read it, and what we had to do with this case, I had to have the case declined from the U.S. Attorney's Office because we're going to turn everything over to the state. They wanted him for the 5 murders. We don't care what other federal violations. We want him for the murders. And they agreed upon that. I had to get a declination from Washington and also a declination from the U.S. Attorney's Office that it will be prosecuted no matter what on the 5 murders that Richard Kuklinski committed. Now, they had a lot of information. The only information they really had was solid was circumstantial. And the circumstantial evidence was absolutely nothing and not enough to convict. They needed Kuklinski to tell me how he murdered each individual and how he killed them with the cyanide. Now, when you say, Jesus Christ, I'm going to meet Jason and first thing somebody comes to me and say, hey, how did you, use cyanide? How do you kill people with cyanide? Bad guy's going to, who the fuck are you?
You're dead. You're dead.
Yeah. I'd either get up, walk away and say, no way, no fucking way. It's not happening. Not happening. So I was good. I had a lot of bullshit. I knew a lot. I had a lot of experience.
Well, hang on, Dom. Let me ask you this real quick. How did all this circumstantial evidence really come up that kind of linked him? I know that the phone number, all these victims had his phone number, but was there somebody that actually kind of was starting to talk?
The circumstantial evidence was that when he did meet these individuals and the phone calls, just because they had phone calls, okay, they had toll numbers. Which were years ago, when you received your phone bill, it had a toll call that was printed out. They don't have that anymore. You don't see that. You got to go to get a subpoena. They used to have that, okay, on the line. But just because he's calling a number, it doesn't mean necessarily he doesn't necessarily mean he's talking to Kuklinski. How do I know he's not talking to maybe his daughter, maybe his wife? Just because he has those toll calls, it doesn't state that he's talking to Kuklinski, but it's circumstantial.
Right.
Now, if Kuklinski said, yeah, I dialed that fucking number and I did speak to him, he's telling me direct evidence here, and I set it up. And they would meet at the store on McBride Avenue in Patterson, and with large sums of money and disappear. Some would be into pornography business, hijacking loads, stolen cars, whatever it may be. And that's where it started, at the store. And he would meet these individuals. And then sometimes he said it was getting too hot at the store. So they asked me to hang out at this location. So what did I do? I went to the store numerous times. And I pull up with a black Mark IV I had this time, a black Mark IV Lincoln Continental, plenty of cash, and I'd walk across the street, and the store was in the middle. Next to the store was an old-fashioned like candy store diner with stools, and they would do the bookmaking in there. In the store, they had a network of guys that was unbelievable. When they did hijackings or stolen property, they'd bring in a item or two. Because if the cops came and, what are they going to do? Charge them with a misdemeanor? They don't have the whole load. They keep it somewhere else. These guys were on top of everything and smart. However, they said, listen, I got approval to do the undercover. We'll start hanging out at the store, which I did. I started hanging out at the store. In the beginning, they were a little bit coy. But then Philly, one of the guys that was cooperating in there, he was nervous wreck. All he had to do was say, welcome back. Then I'll do the rest. Meaning, I could have been coming out of prison and all that. Just, hey, welcome back. And that was it. Then I started hanging out and playing the guys. I started playing the numbers. I was buying coffee. And then they wanted to sell me counterfeit currency. And when I was going to the store, the important part of it about this investigation, no matter what happens, do not take a contract hit. The bottom line of this whole investigation is to get the information and put Kuklinski away. Period. That's the bottom line. No matter what. I don't care what kind of job they offer me. Do not do it. Get out of it however you got to do it. We want direct evidence from Kuklinski. So I started hanging out at the store, and I'm playing numbers and buying them coffee. And they had a network of bad guys. They would tell me that they're doing B&Es in high areas of Bergen County where they knew when they were leaving that they would stake out the house, rip it off, take the booty, go to New York, get rid of it, and then come back. They were so organized. It was unbelievable. So I started hanging out there, and it was just like Goodfellas. Man, just like it, man. Everybody offering everything that you can think of. Every time I went to the store, in the beginning, I wasn't wired. It was just to get a feel. Let people see me, which they were doing. Then, Philly and these other bad guys were saying, the big guy you hear in conversation hasn't been around a while. So I said to myself, he's going to need the cyanide sooner or later. What had happened was he had a connection for the cyanide. And
Just out of curiosity, had you seen him come in and out of there? You already knew what he looked like, right?
I saw from pictures.
Okay.
Just
So
that
had you
he was-
seen him?
Just that he was a big man. You know.
So had you seen him at all? Even just stop in there?
Nope.
And just kind of okay.
Nope. He started staying away because things were getting hot, according to information from the store. Now, a lot of these wise guys would come into the store. They were afraid of this guy. They would call him as the big guy. The big guy around, he's not around, you know. They were nervous, very nervous about him. But the pictures that I've seen, you know, he was about, I'd say about 6'4", 6'5", huge man. And he wore these orange tinged glasses and had a mud chop beard. And people were just afraid of him. And so one day I'm going back and forth to the store several times because we wanted to meet him, you know. Now, I hung out at that store for 18 months. And Kuklinski was avoiding the store. What I did was I asked permission one day just to get the ball rolling because I wanted them bad guys to understand that I can get anything. I had connections. And they approved me bringing in, I had an attaché case, and I brought in 10 blocks of stolen plastic explosives from the military and 10 high standard 22 caliber silencers, no manufacturer, no serial number. And I came in with that, and everybody's saying, Dom, what's in there? I said, it's for people in New York. Just let it go. And I knew they would bite on this. Yeah. What do you mean? Come on. So finally I said, all right, come on. We go in the back room. I opened up the attaché case. Their eyes were like high beams. Holy shit. I can use a couple of blocks of that. Listen, how about selling me one of the silencers? I said, no. I told you these are people from New York. I said, no way. So I said, did you ever use this stuff? I said, do you know how to use this? I said, let me tell you something. You got to use it with a blasting cap, I said, you know, not to light a match with it. I said, it's got to be by an electric shock. You understand me? It's got to be by a blasting cap. I said, if you don't know what you're doing, I said, you fuck around with one of these with a blasting cap here. I said, they'll fucking blow the store across the George Washington Bridge. I said, what are you guys, crazy? So I put down a lockup. I put the attaché case with me, and everybody said, Dom, we can really use these. He says, you know, how many do you think you can get? I said, I can get as many as you want, but I'm not here to start a war. I said, what's wrong with you? I said, there's no manufacturer, no serial number, and they're nice and quiet. Oh, that's all they had. Oh, that's great. That's great. I leave. Word is out there, man. This guy can get anything, you know? And prior to each case that took place, okay, at the store, Bobby Carroll, okay, prior to that with the investigative staff, main characters, George Malaban, okay, Louis Masgay, Paul Hoffman, okay, Gary Smith, Daniel Deppner, okay. These individuals were part of a cell unit that Kuklinski had this group that were committing all different crimes with him. They were deathly afraid of Kuklinski, okay. And Kuklinski's main guy for the cyanide was Paul Hoffman. What happens was later on, Paul Hoffman disappears. Main connection for the cyanide. Who's better to get things? Whose name is going to come up? Dominic Provenzano, And for every case and every person that I mentioned, they drilled in my head, this is what we need when you do meet Kuklinski, okay? Okay, on Deppner, okay, on Hoffman, okay? We need this information. I said, okay. My head was spinning because they were just drilling me all the time. One day I go to the store in September. Now, I've been there for 18 months, on and off. I go in there. I get a cup of coffee next door. I'm just bullshitting with the guys. Phone rings. Philly goes, Dom, the big guy wants to meet with you. I said, really? I said, when? Kuklinski, relating it through Philly, says, how about a half hour at the Dunkin' Donuts, which is the next street over on Union Avenue in Patterson? I said, fine. Tell him I'll be there. Phone hangs up. Now, I'm not wired. Half hour goes, I get in my car. I can't make no phone calls, I go meet him. I pull up in my Lincoln. He pulls up in his Camaro. Now, when this guy gets out of the car, I've done hundreds and hundreds of deals. He gets out of the car and he grows like the Jolly Green Giant. I mean, this is a massive man.
I'm even amazed he was able to get in a Camaro.
Man, I'll tell you, he's a big dude. And he had these orange tinged glasses. I'm going, God damn. He gets out, I get out. Walk over to one another. We shake hands. Let's go in for a cup of coffee. We go into Dunkin' Donut, and for whatever reason, I think it was like almost 11:30 in the morning. We go around the bend, and we're the only customers in there. And we're at the end. We sit down, we're having coffee, and Richie says, we started talking generalities, and he goes, I hear you can get things. I said, yeah. He said, how about coke? You do coke? I said, no, I don't do cocaine. No. What can you get coke for? I said, what do you mean? He says, how much would you be able to get a kilo of coke for? And at that time, I think it was about maybe 30,000. He says, well, I got a connection. He says, I can get it for 28. I said, well, if you can get it for 28, Rich, I said, go for it. He goes, yeah, but I just got one problem. I said, what's that? He says, I really don't know if I can trust the guy. I look at him. I swear to God. He goes, I said, you're not sure if you can trust the guy? I said, you must be a fucking idiot. Who's going to deal with somebody you don't trust? Well, he turned around and looked at me with these orange tinged glasses like he wanted my soul. Who the fuck do you think you're talking to? Like, he's going, and I'm looking, and it was the longest 5 seconds, like he was trying to get my soul and rip it apart. And he goes, points, and he goes, you're right. I knew at that moment. I said, I think I own this mother. I swear. So he says, I could have filled up the chair. He said, you can get pure cyanide? Yeah, I can get pure cyanide. He said, well, I got a couple of rats I want to take care of, he says. And I'm not talking about animals. Got a couple of people he wants to get rid of. So I said, well, one hand washes the other. He goes, what's that? He says, I'm into the steel business. He goes, what do you mean? Bang, bang, bang. I said, but I like it with the quiet stuff, He goes, no problem. I'll get you a hit kit. I said, you show good faith to me. I'll get you the cyanide. Okay. He gets in his, we exchange numbers. Now he's got the number that all the victims that were using that disappeared. Now it was a toll call. Doesn't mean that they spoke to them, to Kuklinski, but that's the number that all the bad guys called and that disappeared. And now I have Kuklinski's number that he wants me to call. He goes his way. Now I'm going one-way streets, make sure I'm not covered by anybody or anything like that. I said, I got to get to a payphone. I get to a payphone, I make a call. When I tell you all fucking hell broke loose, all hell broke loose after 18 months. Nobody expected it. It was just out of the blue. Well, around 3 o'clock, they called a mandatory meeting. All the brass, all the suits, everybody at this location off of Bloomfield Avenue in Jersey. Everybody meets there. Now, I mean, it's loaded with cops, loaded with brass. I walk in, Bobby Carroll, the state detectives, everybody. As I walk in, all my kids comes in, guy grabs me and brings me into a room. Now I'm a big believer in working with other agencies, and what had happened with this, and it's the truth. He says, "Sit down, kid." And I'm looking at him. He's got all kind of brass, and he says, "This is what you're gonna do. You're bowing out of it, and you're going to introduce one of my guys." Do I make myself clear? I said, "What?" I said, "It don't work like that." I said, you got to meet these guys. It's just not where I'm going to take your guy and introduce him and then I'm out of the picture. It's not going to work. I said, you people were trying for how many years? I said, for several years, and you couldn't do it. Do you hear what I just told you? He's coming down. And I finally got up and I said, I'll go fuck yourself. I opened the door. I walk out. And Bobby's there and going, what? Like, what? What's going on here? I tell him what's happening. He goes, "Dom, let's keep a clear head here." I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." And these people knew me from working with them all these other years. So
why in the world would they want to do that? Is it somebody wanting the credit?
I don't know, but he grabbed me immediately and brought me into this room. Now, I don't work for any of them. I'm on loan from the government. I don't have to report to them if I don't want to.
Yeah.
Okay? We're working this joint investigation. And this isn't just some ordinary investigation. This investigation we're talking about is using pure cyanide, how people don't look for this in autopsies. And it's just not that way. What had happened was, now there's a ton of people in and explain what had happened. And before I left with Kuklinski that day before, we exchanged pages. We had pages. You didn't have cell phones at that time. You'd have to go to a payphone. So as I'm talking what took place, the pager goes off. Now there's a ton of people. All of a sudden, an individual goes, "What is that?" I said, "It's my pager." "Who is it?" "Kuklinski." "Get him a tape recorder. I want this recorded right now. I said, "I'm not doing that." Now, all hell is breaking loose. I said, "I'm not fucking doing that, and I'll tell you why. Every time you try to do this with this guy calls the shots." Well, he's not fucking calling the shots. I have pure cyanide that he needs. Okay, he got rid of his connection that he murdered. Okay, and we want to prove that. In addition to that, I said, I have the pure cyanide. In addition, he's going to sell me an assassination kit. He has to show good faith to me first before I get him the cyanide. So Bobby Carroll said, we're gonna go with Dom. Like, this is bullshit. This is, well, where the fuck were you the last 7 years? I mean, trying to put this together. Okay. I don't want to get into badgering anybody because that's not my style. Okay. but there was a lot of bullshit that took place that this thing would have never went down if we didn't put our heads together and work this. So what had happened is they wanted me to hang out the store, wear a wire, okay, because I didn't wear the wire for 18 months because he wasn't showing up. Okay, I go back. My pager goes off. I go to a payphone and I talk to Kuklinski. I said, Rich, you page me? He says, Dom, I've been trying to get you. I said, Rich, I've been busy. Take it easy. Take it easy. Now, there's a telephone call that I have taped. I reiterate what took place the first meeting. And we talk about pure cyanide, how he's got to take care of some rats, and that how he's going to show good faith to me first by selling me a high standard assassination kit. So I reiterate everything. As crazy as this whole thing sounds, when I talk to him that first time, then when I make the telephone call after he paged me, he goes, Dom, how's your end? I said, my end's fine. He says, my end's good too. He says, you can talk. I swear. I never heard this, man. I've been working, I don't know how many undercover operations. I said, Rich, you mean to tell me your end's okay? We can talk? He goes, yes. I said, fuck it. Right? I said, you still want the pure cyanide? This is how I'm talking. He goes, yeah, I want to take care of a couple of rats. I said, okay. I said, but you got to show your good faith to me. No problem. Let's stay in touch. He says, I'll be in touch with you. I said, okay. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that this is how we're talking on the phone, okay, for the first time. Just mind-boggling.
Yeah, because you really didn't know him very well. I mean, you just met the guy.
No. And talk, open up like that. The telephone calls are like so clear, and from the payphone. I had the wire with the Nagra, the reel-to-reel small Nagras that you wore at that time. So I hang out at the store. Word is going, about Kuklinski. Kuklinski calls me in October, says, Dom, I got your kit. And I said, okay. Now, I meet him in September. I see him in October. He meet at the Vince Lombardi service station off the New Jersey Turnpike. We go there. I pull up next to him. He opens up the trunk. Inside the trunk is a high standard 22 caliber silencer fixed to a 22 caliber gun. He's wiping it down. I pay him $1,100 for it. He gets the money and he goes to put it in his pocket. I said, no, don't put it in your pocket. I said, I want you to count it. He goes, no, I'm good. I said, count it. I said, makes me feel good or make you feel good. Count it. I want you to make sure that I'm not shortchanging you. Sounds good on tape. So you're like 100, 200, 3, to $1,100. I said, you satisfied? He goes, yeah. I said, okay. I said, he says, you can get the pure cyanide? No problem. He leaves, I leave. I meet a point man, then I turn over the evidence to them, and they send it to the lab, the gun and the silencer. And the silencer muffled the sound to a point where it meets criteria that is considered a silencer. All right? All this technical bullshit that you got to throw in once in a while. Yeah. So then I'm meeting Kuklinski at the Vince Lombardi service station. Okay, we get some meetings going on because he wants the pure cyanide. So we're sitting at the Vince Lombardi, and this goes on. Am I over something with hours or something?
Are you asking me?
Yeah.
No, you're good. No, you're good. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm okay. So I meet him at the Vince Lombardi service station. I'm wired. He wants the pure cyanide. I said, no problem. Now we're talking about individuals. And I said, Rich, I said, now I'm going to consolidate a little bit of this, okay? We meet several times at the Vince Lombardi service station. He calls it, and why I felt comfortable there, it's a wide open space. It's transitioned with other individuals that can go in there, get gas, go get something, food in the shop there. It's perfect to put surveillance teams in there. And
Eddie doesn't have the cyanide yet.
No, no.
That's got to make you feel better, because
yes, it does. So what happens is, now I have to fit the criteria of these players, okay? Each case, how he murdered them. And we're going on and on and on and about how pure cyanide works. And I said, Rich, I don't fucking get it. I said, I use a gun. I said, what is this with the cyanide? He goes, my friend, let me just tell you this. And this is how we would talk. He says, you give them a little boost, they go to sleep. He says, it's nice and quiet. And they go bye-bye. He says, it's nice and easy. Because I said to the surveillance teams and everybody, if you ever put out a spray, that's what was the allegation. If you ever use a spray, I said, I'm going to waste this guy. I'm not going to take that chance. And they agreed with that. So Kuklinski's telling me all this, how we made the cops look like assholes. I said, what do you mean? He says, well, I had a guy, he says, I had in a freezer for 2 years. I said, you had a guy in a freezer for 2 years? He goes, yeah. He says, and I dumped the body. He says, when the cops found him, he says he only looked like he's dead for maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks. He didn't decompose, because I had him in the freezer. He says, I made the cops look like assholes. And I laughed with him, and I said, no shit. He goes, I said, it works that good? He goes, oh, it works really good. They don't look for it, he goes. They don't look for that. They don't look for cyanide. He says, it's great. It's a quick boost and kiss their ass goodbye. He goes, but he goes, you got to remember this. If you got a client that wants to make a splash with it, he says, then, what you do is you cut the tongue out, you stick it up the rectum. He goes, no problem. Or you put a canary in the guy's mouth. He goes, that's if they want to make a statement. He says, otherwise, I like to do it nice and quiet. He falls asleep and you go bye-bye.
Yeah. I
said, yeah, I guess your kind of way is really good. And he'd laugh. He was a cold-blooded son of a bitch, had no heart. And, he'd kill you in a heartbeat. And we talked about now getting the cyanide, and we're going to talk about getting all the information, how he killed Deppner, how he strangled them at the York Motel. What he did was he put cyanide on the hamburgers, okay? And he said to his crew that they gave one of the hamburgers to Gary Smith, and they said, listen, don't worry about it. Just give it to Gary with the pickles. That's got the cyanide on it. And they were all sitting in the York Motel, and they'd watch him. And all of a sudden, he almost ate the whole hamburger. Now, this is Richie telling me this. He goes, he had a constitution of a fucking bull. Do you know he almost ate the whole hamburger before he keeled over? I said, you're shitting me. He says, no. He says, finally, he keeled over. And then we grabbed the cord from the lamp and strangled him.
Yeah.
And
I want to ask you about this guy, because
and then we dumped him, on the bed, and
under the bed. So this is what I go. I want to ask you, because when I saw the crime scene photos, how many people slept over that dead guy?
Quite a bit. The stench was brutal. That's what happened. The stench was brutal, and they kept complaining to the management. Finally, the management went in there after a week or two, and they looked under the bed, and there was the body, and it looked like it mummified. It was
like all black and
yeah, he looked ripe for sure.
Oh,
I was like, yeah, how would you like to be one of those people, ladies and
No.
gentlemen, listening to this?
and it was, yeah. I mean,
Which based on his personality, he was probably getting a kick out of that. That he
God,
knowing.
are you kidding me? He told me on the tape. I mean, he had a constitution of a fucking bull. He said he almost ate the whole hamburger. And then his whole crew was afraid of him too, you know. But I was getting piece by piece and putting the circumstantial evidence, becoming direct evidence. He was telling me things that weren't made public, and how he murdered them. And now I'm getting direct evidence. Then we had enough of direct evidence to get his ass off the streets. And when we devised a plan where we'd have one of the Attorney General's investigators be one of the rich kids, where I told Rich that, I deal him cocaine. I said, he always comes with cash. And we can split $80,000, I said, for that. But we knew that day we were taking him down. And when I did meet him later on at the Vince Lombardi service station, I hope I'm not losing.
No, you're not at all. Actually, I was just
not
at all.
When we were meeting at the Vince Lombardi service station to do this deal and murder this rich kid and split $80,000, 40 for me and 40 for him. What had happened is they had the wiretaps on, and Kuklinski talking to his other partners down South Jersey, and they wanted us. He says, "I want to make sure I'm going to get Dominic to go down to down South Jersey to Pennsylvania, and make sure his hands are on the steering wheel. I'm going to blow his fucking brains out." So I knew he wanted to kill me, but we were taking him off prior to that. And we had a lot of information about him, to take him down. And when they did take him down, we had the cyanide he took when I met him. Gave him it smelled like almonds that they made up at the lab. And we took Kuklinski down at the he met me at the Vince Lombardi service station. I gave him the cyanide. He drove home, and because we were going to come back and kill the rich kid, but we had another team unit outside the residence, and they took him down there. When they took him down, his wife was in the car. They had a gun underneath one of the seats. They couldn't even put the bracelets on Richie. He was so big. And there's footage of him when he's being arrested, taken in by the state police. And he's just a massive guy, saying,
yeah,
you've seen too many movies, this is all make believe. And, and then we went to trial. It was sequestered, and the undercover tapes killed him. They just killed him. There was just no way around it that he could get out of that.
Yeah.
I'm telling the story of what he said. Or how he murdered her and how he put a guy in a freezer for 2 years. Now you're going to hear him talk. The courtroom was packed. His wife and 2 daughters, when the tapes were played, they ran out of the courtroom. It was devastating, the tapes. Devastating.
Yeah. I saw something recently. I was watching, preparing for this, and the daughters and his wife Barbara went on. It looked like Larry King live, but it wasn't Larry King. It was like a fill-in. But they were on there and talking about it. And one of the daughters, I think it was the oldest one. One of the 2 wasn't really close with her dad. One of them was, but he almost killed the mom more than once. And he had went and told them that if I ever have to kill your mom, I'm going to kill you too.
Yeah, I saw that. I'll tell you this though. Surprisingly, I got a call from the daughter, and the conversations that we had, I never followed up on it. I'd say it's going on 2 years. I have a number. Maybe I should call her, because she was telling me things that would knock your socks off. with the family and the father and what they wanted to do to him because what he did to that family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Man, that would be pretty yeah, I bet one day you will call her. That would be interesting.
It would be interesting. Probably HBO would go off the roof with that because their ratings on all three Iceman tapes, from the first one to the third one, their ratings went through the roof.
Yeah, which brings me, one of the questions earlier was why in the world, and I asked you the same thing, is why in the world would he what was it that caused him to just basically talk all of it?
I tell you,
and I think some of it, some of it was maybe, I think that, he's good for 5. He's suspected of maybe an additional, he's suspected from anywhere from 100 to 200 murders, suspected potentially. And as I'm watching it as the casual viewer, and because I saw this before I was even a homicide guy, I think I can't remember when that thing came out, but as I was watching it, I was like, well, they've got all kinds of, I mean, he's telling the story about all these different murders. Can't they go back and see? I mean, there's got to be so many of these, but is there some exaggeration going on?
Yeah,
maybe a little bit.
There is, and they had a team of guys that went out that he said where people were buried. They got payloaders and dug up things, and but the thing with Calabria, the cop from New York.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't believe that Kuklinski did that number. I think someone else did it, but he was bringing in Sammy the Bull. He was saying that Sammy the Bull supplied him with the shotgun. That was going to be prosecuted at the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office. Then Kuklinski winds up dying in prison.
Which, by the way, that's a little suspicious. At least it's been, I don't know if it's been completely investigated. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think there's some questions, or who knows?
Payback would be a bitch, wouldn't it, if he died of poison? I think that would be great.
Yeah,
I do.
Hey, did you ever think about, I mean, what did he say to you in court after the trial? Because I thought that was kind of interesting.
What
did he say to you? He'd said something to you in the court.
That was the second. That was he pled guilty. The first ones we convicted him. The other two, what had happened is they told me I got to get to court right away. I got to court. I'm sitting down, and he walked in, and that's the first time he said, "Hey, Dominic, how you doing?" I said, "Good, Rich. How are you?" And that was the first time we talked in years. Then.
Yeah. Had you ever thought about, or did they ever come to you and say, "Hey"? Because, I mean, obviously you had a rapport with him in a unique, weird way. I mean, I'm sure that you're the only, well, first of all, he could have confided in the others as to what he had done, but I doubt it. I mean, when I saw the pictures of those guys, I was thinking, now, with you had a rapport with them to an extent. Had you ever thought about going up there and visiting with him in prison and seeing, just really talking to him?
No, and I'll tell you why. Okay, people have asked that, and I said, I hope he fucking rots in prison because what he did to these individuals, I spoke to some of their families. I gave a talk it was some college, and a couple, I didn't know that they were in the audience. And afterwards they came up and they talked to me. And this guy deserved everything he got. I wish he would have been electrocuted. Be honest with you, he hurt many people. Yeah, I wouldn't give him, an inch. And
it's incidentally.
And,
go ahead.
And I told them too when we were doing this case. Then after a while, he pulls out that spray. I said, "I'm killing the son of a bitch," and they knew it too. I said, "I'm not taking that chance."
Yeah. And that part, what you're talking about right there is this is right before, this was the time when you were meeting him finally towards the end.
Yeah.
And they were like, absolutely. They were behind you 100%, which is good. That's not one of those situations that you want him messing around and him on. You want him to be 100% on your side. So did he ever have any other further contact with his family, if from after him getting convicted?
I think he had a couple with the wife. And when I spoke to the daughter when she called that time, he broke the wife's nose, beat her. What he did to the daughters, and she says, when I tell you what also took place, she goes, you're not going to believe it. I said, try me. And I just never followed up, but I did speak to her like maybe 3 times, 4 times on the phone. When he was put in prison, okay, and was convicted, and then there was no more appeals. He once there were no more appeals, you heard the wife speak up and finally say what was going on, because God forbid, with an appeal, but all appeals were dead. They were dead. And why would I go see him? I wanted nothing to do with him. First of all, I knew he wanted to kill me.
Yeah.
Okay. And he used to say, he who hesitates is lost. You fucking A, Rich. May you rot in hell. And I hope you're shoveling a lot of fucking coal, because he really did a number on people.
Hey, did he ever send you a letter or try to reach out to you?
He did send letters to Bobby Carroll and Paul Smith at the AG's office, macabre stuff. And then I would get calls from individuals, and they would look on the internet. There's so much stuff on the internet that they had he's got a following, a cult following. And a lot of them indicated that, listen, I was the rat. I should have been killed. He's the hero. As crazy as this is. Yeah. And there was a song that was on one of those sites. It's wild. It's just wild.
So what are you doing these days? And you don't have to tell us where you're at, but what is life like for Dom? Are you doing, hopefully you're doing speaking?
I'm doing a podcast right now with Jason White, and I'm doing another podcast with, I guess in June I'm going to do another one, but I've been playing a lot of golf, smoking some good cigars, and
good.
Just chilling.
Yeah, I might have to find out where your cigar choice is, and we'll have to send you some. So listen, Dom, I can't thank you enough, buddy. I've everybody's been on the edge of their seat. I've seen a bunch of these documentaries, and I'm still just fascinated, because hearing it straight from you is priceless. And I just, you're one of a kind. I mean, you're of a special breed of cop. And you're right. You said it at the beginning of this. Not every cop can do this, and they just can't. This is nerves of steel. Somebody wrote in there. I say that all the time, that I've got nerves of steel. You literally have nerves of steel, because that's frightening. Believe me.
Well, the people that do this type of work, hats off to them, but you can't really say anything bad. What are the decisions? They got to make these decisions. The worst thing that when I've spoken to people and that have done this for years, you can't have a boss directing you, this is what I want and this is what you're going to do. He's not in that position when he's with that bad guy. And you can't lock a guy in. You got to let him have that freedom to say, hey, either it's going to go or it's not going to go. Yeah. It's like I said, and it's not made for everybody. And a lot of these suits have never been in these situations before. You get a lot of these guys that come in, okay, don't know the first thing about it, who think they do. And they're way off base. You know, it's awesome. Rough life out there sometimes.
It is. Ladies and gentlemen, if you enjoyed this content tonight, then well, thanks a lot for being here anyway. This is fun for me. I don't make any money doing this. But what's good, and you want to know why I do things like this, it's because of meeting people like him, Billy Queen, getting to know these guys. I just can't call these guys up literally. This gives me a reason to call them, because then they're going to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll talk to you. But other than that, they're going to be like, what kind of weird guys wanting to talk to me about this or whatever. So this gives me an opportunity to meet some real legends. I appreciate it. Everybody at the KGRA digital broadcasting team, they appreciate you tuning in. Check out the YouTube page, subscribe. It's free. It doesn't cost you any money. Go to my YouTube page, subscribe, and hit like and drop a comment if this is something that you like. Dom, just real quick, there's 2 books that are in reference to this. Is there just 2? Is there more than that? And which book would you recommend?
The main book by Anthony Bruno, who passed away. That's the book, if you wanted to read that book. He did one hell of a job. The other book, listen, he didn't get he got Jimmy Hoffa. It's bullshit. That was done by the other book. I just had his name. Anyway, Anthony Bruno.
That's the book. That's the book.
Let me just. Oh, wait a minute. Do I have that?
You got a big sign. You got a big sign behind you. It says Anthony Bruno on it.
That's the book sign. That's from the movie.
Okay.
They had, but I don't know if you can see. This is the book by Anthony Bruno.
Yeah, just type in. Oh, there you go. The Iceman. Yeah, so type that in if you're looking to read more on it. He's recommending it. So it's got to be good. So
that's the one. It's not a new book. It's been around. They had one. They also had a British version that they sent me, and I get a lot of messages sometimes from people from all over the country, all over the world, and how it's amazing how they're still tuned in with this case. The only thing is, I hope that we jumped around here that you get a gist of the type of story that and the investigation that took place with this Kuklinski.
No, I think you did great. I think it's very easy to jump around because believe me, my mind's going, all over the place. I'll tell you what, we're gonna have Italian dinner on Arthur Street in the Bronx. The next time I'm in New York City, I'm calling you, and I hope your schedule is good.
Me too.
And we'll make it happen. And if we can't meet there, then we're going to go meet at Goodfellas in Staten Island to have some of the best pizza ever. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's good pizza. And it's supposed to be New York's best, but I don't know. There's a lot.
Well, try the Bronx yet. Hey, Jason, I see one that says, remind Dom to stick around after we go.
Yeah.
Off.
Yeah, you'll stick around for a minute. We'll just talk briefly after we close out of here. Listen, is there anything else that you want to add? Oh, well, if somebody wants to get in contact with you, you just said that people contact you from all over the place. I mean, what's the way to do that if somebody really wanted to? Or if they wanted you for a teaching or a speaking gig, and I know that you reluctantly agree to that, so
they can have my email.
Okay. Then Amanda, I think I sent that to you. You're welcome to throw that up there. Are you sure? This is seen throughout the world.
Yeah, I don't
know that
what
they
I can answer. I'll answer. I try to answer and get back to.
Oh, for sure. Dom is very personable, and I have no doubt in my mind that he would respond to. So Amanda, throw that up there. It's that Gmail I gave you at the beginning of the string of messages I gave you on your Facebook, and if Dom's cool with it, then great. And she's telling me to hold on. Anything else that I didn't ask you that you wanted to throw out there one last time? Man, I can't. I thank you.
Well, really just so that it wasn't only Dominick Polifrone involving this case.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was a lot of police officers involved, a lot of great cops, and from the state police to the attorney general to Bergen County prosecutor's office, ATF. There were a lot of people that put a lot of hard time and hours into this. It wasn't easy. Like I said, it took 18 months to meet him, but thank God. Then from September, October, November, December, I finally got enough of direct evidence to tie him into the murders and put him away for 2 life terms.
Yeah. Richard Kuklinski comes from a really sketchy family. his brother actually in his mid-20s raped a girl on the rooftop of a building in New York City and then threw her off the top of the building. So
in Jersey City.
Jersey City. Okay,
and he's known as the Cowboy, and he's still in Trenton State, I believe. He's still alive, the brother.
So something seriously was going on, the land of dysfunction junction in that family, no doubt. So something was creating their. I mean, who knows? Godly. Well, I don't know what his. I think he dives into his childhood a little bit, but there's something definitely off.
Yeah.
And so if you didn't know that about his brother, I didn't know that he was known by Cowboy, but that's interesting.
Yeah, he's known as the Cowboy.
So anyway, she doesn't have it. So just tell us what your Gmail is. I remember it, or I think I've got it right here. But nevertheless, I'll throw it up. I'll throw it up somewhere. If you're interested in reaching out to him, you more than likely you can. And I'll make sure that it's put on the string of comments here tonight on Rumble. And if you want to reach out to him, that's great. Dom, I'm going to have to, I don't know what it's going to take to talk you into coming to Texas, but we're going to work on that. You and the attorney, we'll see what we can do, because I think you'd be great. And
well, I want to thank you for affording me the opportunity, really, and your viewers there for taking time to listen, and I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Dom. Appreciate you. I really do. And stay safe and reach out to me anytime if you got anything else that you want to talk to me about. You're kind of a friend from here on, as far as I'm concerned. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you again. I cannot thank you enough. This is a record for the show, longest ever. And this is the type of guests that I want to have on here. So if you know of other people, I'm going to have some more epic people that are coming right around the corner. I can't remember who next week is, but it's going to be another epic guest as well. Actually, right around the corner, I'm going to be interviewing Gary Nosner, who was the lead negotiator for Waco. I'm going to be talking to him. We're going to have to tape that one, but I'm going to be talking to him, and then we're going to be talking to another First 48 detective from back in the old school days, Tucson, Arizona. But it'll be kind of a where are you now? And then we've got even more incredible guests coming our way. Thank you again, everybody, and take us out, Amanda.